Welcome to the FitBiz Accelerator, your ultimate guide to launching, growing, and scaling a thriving online fitness business. I'm your host, Tobias Young, and whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, this podcast is packed with actionable tips, real-world strategies, and the insights you need to crush your business goals and build the business of your dreams. Now that you're here, let's dive in. What is up, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of the FitBiz Accelerator Podcast. Hey, this is where we talk about what it really takes to launch, grow, and scale a successful fitness business. And today I've got a great guest for you. I'm joined by Todd Kuhn, and he's a fitness entrepreneur, and he's the co-founder of Todd Kuhn and Core Collab Training. He's got over 20 years of studio ownership experience, and he also specializes in Pilates equipment design and studio growth strategies. So he helps studio owners build profitable businesses, stand out in crowded markets, and avoid all the kinds of mistakes that can cost people a whole lot of money, time, and sanity as well. And today we're going to be diving into a topic that I feel a lot of coaches, trainers, and studio owners really need to hear. We're going to be talking about what it actually takes to open a profitable studio. I'm not talking about the cute little Instagram version. I'm talking about the biggest mistakes first-time studio owners make with things like layout, pricing, and hiring, and then how to go from just being a trainer to becoming a real business owner, and why so many studios actually struggle to break past that 100-member mark. Todd, welcome to the show, my man. I'm fired up for this because there's a lot of people out there who dream about opening up a studio. They picture the cool branding, the aesthetic walls, the sexy reformers, the fun social media posts, the coffee bar, the vibe. But then reality shows up with rent, payroll, retention problems, bad pricing, and, obviously you're going to get team headaches. So I think this conversation is going to be a big eye-opener for a lot of people. So to kick things off, give everybody a little bit about your background and how you got into this world of studio ownership, business growth, and helping operators scale.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tobias. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so my journey started always being quite active and loving strength training. I loved doing that as part of the activity that I was doing outside. I was playing rugby league. So always in the gym from a young age or youngish age, and then got right into it when I was sort of in the late teens with a really great coach that was a great mentor for me and showed me the way of how to perform or how to train like a professional athlete. And then I actually studied business at college and marketing. And I thought that I always thought that I wanted to be working an office job. I graduated from college and got an office job and realized this ain't for me. And at the time, my ex-wife now, she was doing some Pilates classes, and her Pilates instructor was just chock-a-block full. Her schedule was so full, it was just her back to back. And she actually said, to my now ex-wife, you should go and be trained, which she did do. And at that same time, I was thinking, I can't continue doing this. I'm going to go and become a personal trainer. And then fast forward 8 months, we ran some classes in Pilates mat work classes through halls, like scout halls and community halls throughout our entire city. At one stage, we had about 40 locations running. But the goal was always bricks and mortar. We were like bricks and mortar, kind of exactly what you said in your intro there, where it's like, we want to build a brand, we want the building, we want everything working and humming along. And so we did it in a large-ish facility for like a 21-year-old to be putting their young is on the line, I guess.
Yeah.
Signing a big lease at that time. And all people, particularly we were Pilates focused. Everyone was saying, this is a fad in 2001. This is a fad. It'll be all blown over in 2 years, and you're wasting your time. So we were always then trying to hedge a little bit. So with my interest in strength training, it was like, okay, we want to introduce some of this into the facility. So we had one very small room that had some weights there, and we took on some PT clients, but then learnt so much along the way to opening two of those locations. And then after my separation with my ex-wife, we launched another brand just in Pilates and yoga studios, and we scaled those up to 20 occasions.
Nice. Wow. That is awesome. And I think that's one of the reasons that this conversation matters so much, because you've actually lived it. You didn't just pop up on Instagram one day and decide to become like a business coach after reading half a book and then buying a ring light. You actually built this from the ground up. So
Yeah.
let's start here. When someone says that they want to open a fitness or a Pilates studio, what do you think that they usually underestimate the most, and what are they not seeing right away?
Oh, my first question is always what's the goal from wanting to do that? Because I find that, like you said in the intro, so many people have the idea of, oh, it sounds glamorous. It sounds like I open a studio, it'll fill, I'll teach a few classes, I'll do a little bit of this on the side, and then that's how it works. So my first question to people is always, what's the goal of that? And then the second thing is, who is your market? I think is really a critical one of understanding who you want to service and how you're going to service them is my critical piece that I ask everyone about before they begin their journey into studio ownership.
Yeah, that is so good, because I think a lot of people fall in love with the idea of ownership, but they don't always understand the math, the systems, and the leadership that's required to make this thing actually work. So let's go deeper into that. When it comes to a profitable studio, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see first time owners make right out of the gate? Maybe it's areas like pricing, staff, layout, or maybe it's just overall strategy. What do you see?
First is numbers. So people do the math wrong. Like, for example, I can service 8 people an hour. That looks pretty good. But then they're not looking at what are the fixed costs per month and what's my capacity. I think that's one big one that people make the mistake of doing. Then pricing. A lot of people go in with a low price, but then they haven't done that math at the start to work out, okay, where will I be profitable? So they go in with a low price with the goal of, in 6 months' time, the pricing's going to go up. And then in 6 months' time, it doesn't go up. And then 4 years down the track, it's the same pricing when everything else has gone up and you're going backwards. And then probably this is the biggest and it gets back to that goal piece. Like, if you love training people and you love being face-to-face, why are you going to open a business? Because as you open the business, a lot of the time it's going to move away from that face-to-face and become leadership. So it's like growing into those skills of how am I going to lead my team, and what does my role look like in 6 months or 12 months time, and how can I continually grow towards that version of myself?
Yeah, that's huge. And I want to hang out on that pricing for a second, because I think that one gets a lot of people in trouble fast. A lot of studio owners price based on fear. They think, well, I don't want to scare people away. I need to be competitive. I'll just keep it low until I build momentum. We were thinking what you were saying, right? And next thing you know, they built themselves a very pretty little prison, right? They're busy all day. They're not making enough money. They're stressed out. And they're wondering why the dream feels a lot more like babysitting adults and paying bills. So what do studio owners need to understand about pricing if they actually want to build something that's sustainable and that's profitable?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think tying the value that you're actually giving someone in their lives to the price, rather than thinking of it just as a price. And I talk about this often as well, about not just looking at what the next door neighbor's doing and what they're offering, and focusing on how you can have the massive impact on your clients' lives, and then pricing accordingly. Because it's like when you're comparing a BMW to a Scion from a Chinese made Scion.
Yeah.
You can't compare apples and apples. So the value that you're giving and you're providing to people is the key piece to make sure you're going in at a level that is not dirt cheap. And if you are offering a premium service, though, definitely go high straight away and stay with it and trust the process.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because cheap pricing attracts problems a lot of the time. Strong pricing supports service. And if your model is broken from day one, more members aren't going to fix it. They'll just give you a bigger mess. All right, let's talk about identity for a little bit. A lot of people in the fitness industry are incredible coaches. They're passionate. They care deeply about their clients. They know how to help people transform. But being a great trainer and being a great business owner are not, as you know, they're not the same thing. At some point, you have to shift from coach people to I lead a company. So what does that transition look like? And how does someone go from being just a trainer to becoming a true business owner?
Yeah, I think this is just the growth that you're willing to have, growth in other areas. So specifically in our industry, people want to continually learn Pilates, but it's like, let's look at the bigger picture of what can we learn management skills? Can we learn, like in the age that we're in now, can we learn tech? we need to. It's not can we? It's like we actually need to live and breathe this. So we need to be bettering ourselves in all of these areas, because you can, like you said, you can be the best trainer in town, and that's great. But if you're building an organization, you need to develop those skills as well.
Yeah. And that right there is gold, because a lot of coaches, they stay trapped in what I call technician mode. They're doing all the sessions, they're handling all the text messages, they're fixing every problem, they're posting all the content, they're taking out the trash, probably unclogging a toilet at some point, right? That's not freedom. That's ownership with extra steps. So when someone is making that jump into real ownership, what habits and what mindset shifts or responsibilities do they need to develop if they want to grow without becoming their own bottleneck?
Yeah, a lot of the time for me, it gets to the vision. Like, what is the vision from the start? And like, for example, coaches, if you've got something that is in your signature and you can bundle that up and be like, this is my signature, that can then be trained to another person and to another person and to another person. So you're still having the same impact that you are having on one person. But if you're training multiple people, all of the skills or all of the signature that you have in your system, then you're able to impact more people and replicate it over and over and over again, which is something that I think it comes from that, almost like what you said before with like a prison. You're going to be trapped if you're relying just on your expertise. And you want to think not only about how do I impact my clients, but if I want to have a grander scale impact, how can I impact other trainers that buy into my signature method to be able to impact more people in their lives?
Yeah,
but I think it's
that.
mindset. To answer your question, I think that it's all about mindset.
Yeah, love it. And let's hit on another big one. You mentioned that a lot of studios struggle to scale past 100 members. Like it's kind of like the benchmark. Why is that such a sticking point, and what usually starts to break when a studio actually gets to that level?
Yeah, that's a good one. I like to explain it. So, when people, particularly when they start bricks and mortar or anything that we get excited about, it's like the first 6-8 weeks where we're working on adrenaline. We're so excited. We're having impact on people. We're getting great feedback, and we sort of go up on this curve and we feel amazing. Then all of those other things that you mentioned, like unclogging the restroom and wiping down equipment and doing towel service and handling people cancelling 10 minutes before they were going to come in or whatever it might be. The pressure of all of those hats just starts to weigh down and weigh down and weigh down. And then I feel that there's like this 8-12 week mark where most studio owners just start going, I just can't do this. I can't wear all of these hats. And which is usually coincides with the time where boutique studios are hitting those 100 members. And then we're in this constant battle of 1 week down, 1 week up, 1 week down, 1 week up, and we just can't break through that ceiling. And I think that comes down to systems for people understanding that it's not just about posting a cutesy image on Instagram and people are going to walk through the front door. It's about the systems of getting those people trialing, converting those people to members, and then most importantly, keeping those people as members for as long as you can.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because getting to a certain size often exposes the cracks. Totally. What worked when it was just you and a handful of clients doesn't work when you've got a bigger member base and a team and more moving parts and higher expectations. So if somebody is sitting in that zone right now, maybe they've got some momentum going, maybe they're doing okay, but they feel stuck. What should they be looking at first if they want to break through that ceiling and then keep scaling the business?
I believe systems. I also am a big one for mentorship. Finding someone that's had success and asking questions. I think a lot of people get to that point and they go inward, and that's the time that you actually need to open up to someone that's been there in that position before to say, this is where I'm at. Have you been in this situation? What are some strategies that I could work with to get to that next level? And I feel there's so many people out there now that have the knowledge and they're willing to share it. And it's just about asking the question, opening yourself up to that opportunity.
Yeah. That was the biggest change in my career, was when I finally hired coaches to be able to help me. And that's when things started to scale exponentially. And that's so powerful that you said that. And I also want to touch on hiring, because this is another area where people often get smoked, right? A lot of studio owners either hire too late, they hire too fast, or they hire based on who seems cool instead of who can actually help the business grow.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest hiring mistakes that you see studio owners make? And then what should they be thinking about when they're building this team up?
Yeah, even from my point of view, the number of hires that I've done where on paper that person looks like they've got every box ticked, but they're not a fit for your organization would probably be my one thing that I would say, is making sure that you're getting the people that match the values of your organization and not matching what they should say on their resume. And the other thing is, I'm really big on hiring those values and personality and training the skill. The same way that I look to mentors to help me, I like to get people in that are looking for mentorship, that we can work together as a team to achieve bigger goals. But you're so right, is that it's one or the other. It's like too late and then it's a panic. Well, I've got to get these people, or it's too soon where the culture hasn't been developed enough, and then we're getting people in that aren't a fit straight up, and then it mucks everything up.
Yeah, especially if the payroll's too high in the beginning and then you're not getting enough on the back end. It's a mess. Because one bad hire can actually drain your money. It can drain your energy. It can drain the culture that you were talking about and stop the momentum pretty quickly. And on the flip side, the right hire can give an owner their life back. So now I'm curious about something else. You and your wife ex-wife built this thing together and then expanded into partnerships and into franchise formats. So that's a very different game than simply owning one location. So what changes when you move from running one studio to building an actual brand that can scale through partnerships or franchising?
Yeah, really everything got back to, for us, I'll just clarify one thing. Previous studios was my ex-wife, and my new wife was the next one that we scaled to 20.
Okay, cool.
And one thing that was the value, like living through the values, and the organization living through the values really helped in as far as getting people on the same page. So that obviously partnerships and franchisees, everything's a little bit different, but doesn't matter whether you're working in a partnership or in a franchise. I mean, it's one and the same really, but it's finding the right match for yourself, for those people, for the organization. And I found I actually really, that was one real struggle, is finding people that were on the same page, that weren't just looking to go, here's my money, I'm going to go to the beach for the next 4 weeks and I expect a return on this investment. Yeah. And we're fortunate, but it was like a funnel, getting the people that were really interested and then refining. And then finally at the bottom, you'd find 5% of people that would actually be on the same page and live by the same values.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because now we're not just talking about running a studio. We're talking about building something that can outlive your daily presence. And that's when it starts becoming a business, not just a really demanding job with fancy flooring. So the person listening in who wants to open a studio someday, or maybe already has one and they want to grow it, what are a few non-negotiables that they need in place before they want a business that's actually going to be profitable and scalable?
Yeah, I think non-negotiables are knowing the numbers. That's actually the non-negotiable, is if you know exactly where you're hitting a break-even point, and then each and every time that you go above that, you've got growth in you. And then the systemization. Systemization is a non-negotiable from the get-go. Understanding that you need a way of attracting people, and that needs to be a system. Then the service in the studio is also a system. The service of retention is also a system. And then even when people do go out the back door, is there a way then to reactivate people? So we've got those systems in place, so that, and not that it needs to become militarized, but there needs to be heart there, but there also does need to be a system.
Yeah. And that's so valuable too. I also know from your application that a big part of what drives you is helping people step into the next, I would say, best version of themselves, and then navigate the discomfort that comes with growth. And I think that's something every fitness entrepreneur can relate to, because growth sounds exciting until it asks you to become somebody different, right? Until it asks you to lead better, to decide faster, to communicate more clearly. You let go of control, you raise your standards, you have hard conversations. So what have you learned about that personal growth side of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I think understanding that you're always learning and you're always trying to level up in whatever facet that it is. I think it's, like you said, having the tough conversations that you don't want to have, making those hard decisions when you see someone that isn't a fit and having to move someone on. Those things that, from 20 years ago to now are things that I have to do on a daily or weekly basis. And it's something that is scary at the start, but you really need to think about your end goal and where you want to be, and where that, like what you were saying before, Tobias, is that a wrong hire can spoil everything. So if you're not in a position and you don't have that strength to be able to cut your losses while you can and have that tough conversation, then in 6 months' time, it could be the detriment of the entire business.
Yeah. It's hard for a lot of studio owners, gym owners, those things, to have those hard conversations, because if you have somebody that's a wrong fit or becoming a cancer, it can like spread throughout your whole studio, right? And business growth obviously is going to expose you, and it will show you where you're strong, but it'll also show you where you hesitate, where you play small, and where you've been avoiding the hard decisions. And sometimes that next level in business is less about a new tactic and more about becoming the type of person who can handle that next level. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you this. For the coach, the trainer, the studio owner listening right now who feels called to become something bigger, maybe they're nervous, or maybe they're overthinking it, or maybe they're stuck between comfort and growth. Like, what would you say to them?
Well, in Australia, we have a terminology, it's have a go. And I'm very big on having a go. What's the worst that can happen? We're only here for a number of years. And do we want to be looking back in 20 years' time to say, damn, I should have done that? Yeah. But then the second part to that, though, is willing to look at yourself in the mirror and say, where do I need to improve and how can I improve? I think those two ingredients of starting for a start and then actually being honest with yourself. These are the areas that I need to improve here, here, and here. And how can I? And I'm going to, even if it's small steps, you make those small little changes. And in 2 years' time, you're a different person, a different leader, a different business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And now, guess what, man? I get to throw you into what's called the rapid fire rounds. It's no long answers here. These are just short, quick, first thing that comes to mind, right? So let's dive into the rapid fire. So what's one thing that new studio owners almost always underestimate?
They almost underestimate pricing.
Good. What matters more at the beginning? Is it great coaching, great marketing, or great systems?
Great systems.
What's one pricing mistake that makes studio owners work way too hard for way too little?
Yeah, I'm trying to undercut the next business.
And what's one thing that you would fix immediately if you walked into a struggling studio tomorrow?
Putting a marketing system in place that is going to continually get new trialees into members.
Okay. What separates the studio owners who stay stuck from the ones who actually finally scale?
Being honest with themselves.
What's one hire people make way too early?
Managers.
And what's one hire they make way too late?
Often it's the technicians they'll get a manager and they'll stay a technician. And then it probably should be the reverse. Okay. And
what's one myth that actually people believe about opening up a profitable studio that's just not true?
That it's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And what's a non-negotiable? If somebody wants to grow past 100 members, what do they need to do?
Get those systems in place. All comes down to those systems.
That's right. And get yourself a business coach
mentor,
to help you do it faster, right? So for the trainer that's listening right now, for the trainer, coach, owner, studio owner, gym owner listening right now who feels like they own a job instead of a business, what's one mindset shift that they need to make immediately?
Leadership. They need to look into the leadership side of things and become leaders within their community and within their business.
Yeah, good. And then here's the last one. If you can go back to the earlier version of yourself when you were just kind of getting started, what's the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
When things are good, that's the time to put the foot down.
Nice.
Go harder.
Yeah, that's a perfect message. So Todd, this has been an awesome conversation, man. A lot of wisdom here. We've been having a lot of fun. And I think this is going to help a lot of people avoid some expensive mistakes and then think bigger about what they're actually building. So for everybody listening, If you got value from this episode, make sure you share it, you tag us in your stories, and you send this to another trainer, coach, or studio owner who needs to hear it. Todd, where can people connect with you and learn more about what you do and what you're doing?
Yeah, through www.thecorecollabusa.com.
Awesome. Appreciate you being here, brother. And to everybody listening, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the FitBiz Accelerator Podcast. Remember, building a real business takes more than passion. It takes clarity, it takes courage, it takes systems, and it takes the willingness to grow into the leader that your business needs. So we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the FitBiz Accelerator. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a tip or strategy to grow your online fitness business. And if you're ready to fast track your success, don't forget to check out tntfitprocoaching.com. Until next time, stay consistent, stay focused, and keep crushing it.